Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And it's a Tuesday morning. It's September 9th, 2025. Great to be with you on the one, the only EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network on this, the feast day of St. Peter Claver. Born in Spain back in 1580, in 1610 he landed at Cartagena, modern-day Colombia, the principal slave market of the New World, where 1,000 slaves were landed every month. After his ordination in 1616, he dedicated himself by special vow to the service of the slaves at work that was to last for 33 years. He labored unceasingly for the salvation of the African slaves and the abolition of the slave trade in general, and the love he lavished on them was something that transcended the natural order. St. Peter Claver, pray for us. And it is a Tuesday morning. Good to be with you, September 9th. We have a great lineup for you. We are going to be chatting with Steve Ray, of course, author, speaker, pilgrimage leader, and convert to the faith. He's going to be talking to us about the 7 known sorrows of Mary. And the Feast of Our Lady of Sorrows, by the way, is coming up on September 15th. And I know that so well because that is the date of my father's passing. And I didn't know this until I sat down to pray the rosary for my father the day he died after we got home from planning the funeral. But if someone dies on the Feast of Our Lady of Sorrows, they are promised a peaceful death. And my father literally went to sit in his little chair after breakfast and just fell asleep, bless his heart. So this is a beautiful feast and also a beautiful mystery, the 7 Sorrows of Mary. And Steve has broken it down for us beautifully. I just hope we have time to go through all the sorrows because he does such a terrific job of explaining them to us. And then I look forward to chatting with Greg and Julie Alexander from the Alexander House, our monthly marriage discussion, Mornings on Marriage. Have you noticed all the talk about marriage recently with the engagement of Taylor Swift, which was practically broke the internet? I think it was 2 weeks ago when she announced her engagement. What does that mean for marriage? Apparently, there has been a spike in interest in marriage, and a lot of folks in the Catholic circles are talking about this. We will get the perspective of our marriage coaches, Greg and Julie, when they join us at about 40 minutes past the hour. We'll talk about the second hour of the program on EWTN's Radio Extra a little bit later, but on Tuesdays, just keep this in mind, we always have Kelly Salomon from Newman Guide News, the Cardinal Newman Society, giving us great news on education. What are we looking at weather-wise? Well, the National Weather Service is telling us we have severe thunderstorms in the central and southern plains, flooding potential in the Pacific Northwest, as well as Kansas and Florida. So here's the full forecast for you. Severe thunderstorms are possible in portions of the central and southern plains. As we mentioned, there is a potential for flooding across the state of Kansas. In the Pacific Northwest and Northern California, there is potential for isolated flash flooding from thunderstorms near burn scars and sensitive terrain. Now, showers and heavy rain will persist in the Florida Peninsula through the middle of this week. And that is a look at our forecast this morning and also our rundown, as we say in the biz, almost 4 minutes past the hour. Do hope you're having a beautiful Tuesday morning, September 9th, 2025. Let's check the news here on EWTN. President Trump saying America was founded on faith, and when it's strong, good things happen for the country. Speaking on religious liberty, that was yesterday at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C.
And under the Trump administration, we're defending our rights and restoring our identity as a nation under God. We are one nation under God.
Trump also said America was founded with religious freedom at the forefront.
But as everyone in this room understands, it is tyrants who are denying our rights and the rights that come from God. And it's this Declaration of Independence that proclaims we're endowed by our Creator with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
He announced the Department of Education will be issuing guidelines aimed at protecting the right to prayer in schools, his appearance coinciding with a public meeting held by the Department of Justice's Religious Liberty Commission to gather information and testimony on issues related to religious freedom in America. The 8-year-old boy killed in the mass shooting at a Minneapolis Catholic church last month is being remembered for his energy and his kindness. Fletcher Merkel's aunt, Erin Shermock, was among those who spoke at his funeral over the weekend.
His gift to us, to all of us, was the chance to know him
Hundreds
and
of
love
people
him.
Hundreds of people
that
attending
was
the
Fletcher's
service.
Greatest gift.
at Mount Lutheran Church, including Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara. A funeral for the other child killed in the shooting, 10-year-old Harper Moisky, is set for next weekend. And Vatican experts saying yesterday the 2 children killed in that shooting at Minneapolis Catholic Church could one day be included on a list they're compiling of new martyrs and witnesses of the faith. Harper Moisky, 10, and Fletcher Merkel, 8, were killed, as you heard, while attending a pro-kill school mass at Annunciation Catholic Church on August 27th, prompting some to ask whether they could be considered martyrs killed in the hatred of the faith. President of the Vatican Commission of New Martyrs, Witnesses of the Faith, said if the diocese or other local ecclesial entities presents these figures to us as witnesses of the faith, we will examine them and see if we can include them in the list. The commission, created by the Pope back in 2023, Pope Francis said, is under the Dicastery for the Causes of the Saints, is compiling an archive of the lives of Christian martyrs, both Catholic and non-Catholic, who have been killed in the new millennium. Meanwhile, the Pope Leo XIV, is set to preside at a prayer service to remember the many Christians of our time who have been killed on account of their faith in Christ. The Holy Father will be joined by representatives of other Christian churches and ecclesial communities for, as we mentioned, ecumenical commemoration of martyrs and witnesses of the faith of the 21st century. Now, this will take place on the Feast of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross on Sunday, September 14th, in the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls. That commemoration is also, again, an initiative of the Dicastery for the Causes of Saints and its Commission of New Martyrs, Witnesses to the Faith, again, which was established by Pope Francis in 2023. Mark Mayfield tells us the Supreme Court is blocking a federal judge's ruling that restricted the way ICE agents conduct immigration operations in Los Angeles.
President Trump's border czar Tom Homan applauded the decision.
It's the right call, and I'm glad they found that way because these men and women, ICE and Border Patrol, they're well trained. They know exactly what they're doing. They follow the law.
The federal officers had been restricted from stopping people based on their race or ethnicity or if they speak Spanish. The court's decision was in response to an emergency request filed by the Trump administration, and it puts on hold the ruling from the Biden-appointed judge. Homan says he can't understand why a governor or a mayor wouldn't want to protect the people of L.A. and help ICE arrest dangerous criminals. I'm Mark Mayfield.
The president of the union that represents Border Patrol agents is praising the Supreme Court's ruling on enforcement tactics used in Los Angeles. Paul Perez says ethnicity and language are simply factors among several that are used in immigration enforcement.
We use a number of factors to determine where we're going to go and who we're going to go after. And many of these people, they run as soon as our agents and officers get there. So that as well is an articulable fact that can be used.
The Supreme Court's ruling allowing the continuation of roving patrols and immigration enforcement operations. The ruling is preliminary. The case is ongoing. And the Department of Homeland Security, meanwhile, launching an immigration crackdown this week in Chicago and across the state of Illinois. The DHS announcing yesterday on social media the launch of Operation Midway Blitz in honor of Katie Abraham, whose father spoke about the man accused of killing her in a drunk driving crash.
So to me, these are not the productive folks we want to bring in the country. You want to build a country on migrants, probably not the guy you want to stand behind to build a country.
Police say Abraham died in January when an undocumented drunk driver slammed an SUV into the vehicle she and her friends were riding. Officials say the ICE operation will target the criminal illegal aliens who flocked to Chicago and Illinois because they knew the governor there, Governor Pritzker, and his sanctuary policies would protect them and allow them to roam freely on American streets. President Trump is also speaking out about last month's deadly stabbing of a Ukrainian refugee on a Charlotte light train last month. He commented on the attack yesterday.
There are evil people. We're all people of religion, but there are evil people, and we have to confront that. I just give my love and hope to the family of the young woman who was stabbed.
New video release shows the moment before the 23-year-old was stabbed to death by a man sitting behind her. Trump called the man a lunatic and said, "We have to be able to handle this. If we don't have a country." The man was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. reportedly plans to announce that taking Tylenol during pregnancy may be linked to autism. Reporter Maria Parra says that's according to the Wall Street Journal.
We did hear from an HHS spokesperson who says, quote, "Until we release the final report, any claims about its contents are nothing more than speculation," but they add they will be using, quote, "gold standard science."
The company that makes Tylenol says it has continuously evaluated the science and believes there's no causal link between the pain relievers used during pregnancy and autism. The journal reports that they will be releasing more information by HHS later this month and will also mention a possible link between low folate levels and autism. And Ross Cullen tells us the Prime Minister of France is now expected to step down after losing a big confidence vote.
Francois Bayrou will formally tender his resignation to President Emmanuel Macron on Tuesday. And the president has a few options. He can appoint a new prime minister, call a snap general election, or he can himself resign, although he has ruled that out. The challenge for President Macron is, can he find a prime minister who can find a majority in parliament to pass a budget before the end of the year? Ross Cullen, Paris.
It appears New York City Mayor Eric Adams does not want to talk about the mayor's race after insisting on Friday he won't be dropping out of it. Yesterday, he dodged reporters' questions on the matter at an unrelated event.
Next question. Mr. Mayor.
There's been reports that President Trump wants him and Republican Curtis Lewa to drop out of the race to give Andrew Cuomo a better chance at beating the Democratic nominee and the frontrunner Zohran Mamdani. Polls show Adams is a distant fourth place in the race, and there are reports that Trump is considering offering him a job within his administration. And Daniel Martindale tells us a tsunami is not expected. This after a magnitude 5.8 earthquake struck off the coast of California and Oregon.
The earthquake hit just after 9 o'clock Monday night. It was centered about 165 miles northwest of Eureka, California. There was a magnitude 4.4 aftershock in the same area 7 minutes later. No tsunami warnings, advisories, watches, or threats are in effect. I'm Daniel Martindale.
And finally, in our news segment on a Tuesday morning, it is 11 minutes past the hour, September 9th, 2025. Tammy Trujillo tells us self-described tax experts of social media are apparently costing taxpayers millions in penalties.
According to an IRS news release, the agency has reported more than $160 million in penalties since 2022. The IRS is now warning of two schemes in particular that have been circulating recently, which promote the misuse of the fuel tax credit, as well as the sick and family leave credit. Taxpayers who subscribe to social media tips are encouraged to amend their tax returns immediately, respond to IRS letters, and hire reputable tax professionals. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
One more look at the weather before we take a break and bring on our first guest of the morning, the one, the only Steve Ray. The National Weather Service is saying we have severe thunderstorms that are possible in portions of the central and southern plains, and there's also potential for flooding across the state of Kansas. In the Pacific Northwest and also in Northern California, there's potential for isolated flash flooding from thunderstorms near burn scars and sensitive terrain. Showers and heavy rain will persist in the Florida Peninsula, and that will be through tomorrow, the middle of the week. It is a Tuesday. It's 13 minutes past the hour. We're so glad you joined us on EWTN's Catholic Connection. September 9th, the Feast of the Great St. Peter Claver. Coming up after the break, we are going to talk all about the Blessed Mother. In particular, Steve Ray is going to walk us through the 7 sorrows of Mary. And guess what? They're in the Bible. Yep. It's scriptural, as is the Catholic faith. We'll explain up next. Don't touch that dial, as we say in Radioland. More great Catholic radio coming right up in about 2 minutes. Welcome back, Catholic Connection. It's a Tuesday morning. Thanks for tuning in to EWTN's program, CC with TT on EWTN. Always great to have Steve Ray with us. And this morning, we're talking about the 7 sorrows of Mary. Steve, thanks for joining us. I think a lot of us may be familiar with the sorrowful mysteries, and we may also be familiar with Mary's sorrows in terms of the feast day of Our Lady of Sorrows, which is coming up. But I'm not so sure all of us could name the sorrows, even know where they are in the Bible. And you put together some terrific points for us this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Teresa. Always happy to join you. And September, the Church celebrates the sorrows of Mary. That every month they have a devotion, and this month of September is devoted to the 7 sorrows of Mary. But we have scheduled with you, and this is going to be fun for me, and I hope for the audience, is for the next 4 weeks, this week and 3 following, we're going to go through other sorrows of Mary. Today we'll do the 7 traditional sorrows, but the next 3 weeks we'll do 12 unknown sorrows of Mary, which people always find very fascinating. I came up with them by just reading the scripture and studying Mary and kind of walking through the land of Israel and thinking about her and her life. And so I came up with 12 unknown sorrows of Mary that we'll go over through the rest of this month, because September is the month of the sorrow of Mary.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's start with the history of this devotion and the feast day itself.
Well, it was first known as Our Lady of Compassion. Compassion means to suffer with. So it was where we would think about her and what she suffered, and we would suffer with her, in a sense, through our meditations. And it was originally right before Good Friday, because obviously that's where the worst of her sufferings came about during the week of the Passion. But it grew, and this always people have thought about this, but, as the church grows, it develops more into popularity and so on. So the 12th century, 14th, 15th centuries, it became very widespread. Pope Pius XII in 1815 made it a approved devotion. So it's saying that the church encourages you now. We've always known these 7 sorrows. We've always had compassion with Mary, suffered with her on these. But now it's a official devotion that the church is going to specify. So it was set on the calendar by Pope Pius X, and now it is a permanent date.
So it was first approved by Pope Pius the Seventh around 1815, right?
Right, that's the first one, Pope Pius the Seventh. I think I said 12th, but it was the 7th. You're correct. And that was when it was first devotion was approved, but then put in the calendar in September by Pope Pius X. The beauty of the church is there are things that we know to be true for the matter sufferings of Mary, but the church then solidifies it. It puts it into tangible, practicable devotion, so that we can take these biblical truths, these sufferings that Mary had, and we can put ourselves in her place and understand those sufferings too, and the whole church around the world can do it together. This is the beauty of the universality of the church. When I was a Baptist, my church was just there on that corner. And when we became Catholic, every time we drive around, we'd pass a Catholic church, Janet would say, "Oh, there's our church. Oh, there's our church," because everywhere we were, it's the universality of the church. In every church is the Blessed Sacrament reserved there in the tabernacle. And all around the world we have these wonderful devotions that we share. And this one is one of those that we share, the 7 sorrows, or it's also called the 7 dolors, which is Latin for sorrows. So now since 1815 they've been official. And we present them. And we could ask, why suffering? Why is there suffering? Well, even in Hebrews chapter 2, I find this very interesting, that it was fitting that Jesus himself, to bring many sons to glory, should make the founder of their salvation perfect through suffering. And it says, although he was a son, that's Jesus, he's the Son of God eternally from all of eternity. He is the Son. He learned obedience through what he suffered. That's just Jesus learning obedience through what he suffered. That's a very strange concept for us, but this is in his humanity. So we learn obedience, we learn humility, a lot of things. It's like a son who's disciplined by his father, so to speak. He learns through that suffering to be perfect, to be responsible. So I remember when my dad spanked me when I was a boy. I didn't like it, but I realized even then and now that it shaped me and formed me to be a responsible, reliable adult. And this is what suffering does for us. There's a lot about suffering in the Bible, but you would think, though, wouldn't you, Teresa, that Mary when she agrees to do this wonderful thing to bring God's Son into the world, that he would protect her from suffering?
Well, but Jesus said, they persecuted me, they'll persecute you, right? And I think Jesus allowed it to happen because we could relate to her. So many people can relate to Mary, especially moms or people with family troubles, right? A situation that is difficult, and obviously the death of a son, horrible, horrible death, but also just the way they were treated, from the get-go in terms of having to flee to Egypt, and so many different, I think, experiences of the Holy Family, even though it happened thousands of years ago, are still relatable today.
Yep, that's true. There's a quote from In the Glories of Mary by St. Alphonsus Liguori. I won't read the whole thing, but he talks about this valley of tears that we live in and so on. Mm-hmm. And he said, the Lord exercises compassion toward us because he does not tell us ahead of time what our crosses and our sufferings going to be. Just imagine if you knew them all in advance, Teresa, that every day all the sufferings you're going to have, and they're all charted out on your calendar. But he doesn't do that to us. He doesn't make them known to us. We suffer them, but we suffer them only once, and we don't have to think about it. But it says, but he did not exercise this compassion with Mary. He didn't. She did know, who, because God wished her to be the queen of sorrows and all things like her son, was always before her eyes the sufferings, and continued the sufferings that awaited her. St. Simon in the temple, having received the child in his arms, predicted that she would have these sorrows. A sword's going to pierce your soul also, which we'll talk about more. But the Holy Virgin herself said to St. Matilda, and this is an interesting quote, that the announcement of St. Simeon, all of Mary's joys changed into sorrow. That she knew ahead. Not like us. We don't know. I know we're going to go through sufferings. You are, Teresa. I am, everybody's. But we don't have them on our calendar. We haven't known what they're going to be. Mary knew that this was going to happen to her. She knew she was going to suffer, and she still said yes. She still was willing to go through all of this because she had this great project to fulfill for God, so to speak. And she knew her son was going to suffer, and he was going to also, the sword is going to pierce her soul. In other words, she would have a shared suffering with her son. We'll talk more about how she received that when we get to that sorrow later today.
Yeah, we're going to take a break in a minute, but I just wanted to pick up on what you were talking about with St. Simeon in the temple, where he says, set a sign for which shall be contradicted, and therefore the sword of sorrow should pierce her soul, and thy own soul a sword shall pierce. And the rest of that verse says, the sword shall pierce your heart so that the thoughts of many will be revealed. And I find that to be such a powerful verse, that Mary's suffering happened so she could obviously be an intercessor for us in our own suffering and our own prayer. That's how I take that verse. I think it's very Marian, and I think it's a great apologetic verse in terms of the intercession of the Blessed Mother. I haven't been able to find too much about it, but a couple of times I would go back to that verse over and over again, thinking, to me, that speaks of Mary's intercession and St. Simeon in the temple, recognizing that. We're talking with Steve Ray, of course, author, speaker, and pilgrimage leader, convert to the faith, the 7 sorrows of Mary in the Bible. Steve giving us a great background to start with in terms of how we began to know about Mary's suffering and why it's important. And then we come back, we're going to go through, hopefully, Steve, we can get through them all, but we'll have like about a 9-minute segment. So I'm hoping that we can fly through this at least enough so people get a sense of these different sorrows. We'll be right back. Steve Ray joining us on a Tuesday on the 7 sorrows of Mary in the Bible. More coming up. Having a powerful and beautiful conversation with our dear friend, author, speaker, well-known EWTN regular, convert to the faith, pilgrimage leader Steve Ray. The Sorrows of Mary, the Feast of Our Lady of Sorrows, coming up on the 15th of September. Steve, before we move on, I do want to mention that you have a pilgrimage going to Israel. And the reason I want to mention it is because if you want to see a very beautiful image of Our Lady of Sorrows, then you need to go to, of course, Holy Sepulchre Church. And oh my goodness, that statue that you see of Mary enclosed in glass before you get to the spot of Golgotha right there, that's pretty incredible, right, Steve?
Yeah, it's a haunting image of her. I think it's my favorite of the Sorrows of Mary. And yes, we're going to go December 28th go to my website. But December 28th, we're leaving over Christmas break, and there's going to be no crowds, Teresa. We'll be the first ones back. No crowds, no lines. So when we go up to Calvary and the tomb, we'll have it to ourselves. We can actually stay in there and pray. Other times you get 20 seconds and you get the bums rush out. But this way, it's going to be very delightful. So Israel, December 28th.
Okay, this is December 28th, and I just want to give people your website, CatholicConvert.com or Footprints of God also, but everything is on your homepage at CatholicConvert.com. All right, let's talk. We only have about 9 minutes. I want to make sure we get through these sorrows. What's the first sorrow of Mary, Steve?
Okay, the first sorrow of Mary is a prophecy of Simeon, but the way you have to set it up is 40 days after a birth of a boy. First of all, there's already been the circumcision, so that's the first time he shed his blood for us. On the 8th day of his birth, Mary saw him shed his blood for us the first time in a circumcision. But now, 40th day, she has to take him to the temple to present him to God. And can imagine she's a 15-year-old girl, and she's got this pudgy little baby in her arm cooing to her, and she's so proud of him, and she goes in, and all of a sudden this grizzly old prophet with his white beard wagging comes up to her, and he says, "This is the child that's been set for the rise and fall of many in Israel, and a sword will pierce your soul also." Why also? Because it means a sword's going to pierce your son's soul and yours also. So this is a dual suffering. He's going to be pierced with a sword, and so are you. Can you imagine your 15-year-old girl going into this? I'm bringing the Son of God into the world. I'm bringing him to the temple. Oh, she's so proud. And this old, pierce your soul. That just kind of took all the joy out of it, the whole experience. And she doesn't know what that means. Mary doesn't know everything. She's not God. The angel doesn't appear to her every morning and give her updates about what's going to happen today. She has to live by faith, walk through the darkness in faith, just like we do. That's why she's a model for our faith. She doesn't know what that means. She won't know for another 30-some years, 33 years, when that sword actually does pierce up at Calvary. And there's that picture at the top of Calvary that you mentioned with Mary with haunting eyes, and the sword is going right into her chest.
Yeah,
very
it's incredible.
Image. So,
all right, let's move on to number 2 quickly, because I want to get through these. The flight into Egypt. Yeah.
A flight into Egypt. 15-year-old girl, Joseph, her husband, now they have to flee in the middle of the night. Their child is in danger. This isn't just they're going on a vacation to Egypt. They're in danger. The angel says, quickly, get up and flee. Herod's going to kill the baby. Well, this is a great sorrow. She's leaving her home, her family. She's leaving the people she knows, and she's going. How far is it she had to walk? They had to walk. They didn't take a bus, and they couldn't fly. They had to walk through the Sinai Desert, 250 miles. 250 miles. You can travel roughly 20 miles a day if you're really in good shape and so on. So divide 250 up, even on a good day of travel, 20 miles a day, looking for water, looking for food, all these kind of things. That was a long trip and no accommodations. Maybe riding a donkey, maybe not. Maybe walking. Either one's rough. So that's the second sorrow of Mary. And anyone that's thinking about it, walking across the Sinai Desert, yeah, you're going to be pretty sorrowful about it too.
Yeah. This is really, really powerful. I think it forces us really to think about Mary and everything she went through, and makes her, I think, more of a mama for us, and also a great intercessor. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Number 3 and number 4, we have the loss of the child Jesus in the temple, and then Mary meeting Jesus on the way to Calvary.
Yeah, this one, the loss of the child in the temple is just bizarre to me. Why? How could they leave their son behind and not know they left him behind? When we go on a trip, we always go through our checklist, and we say, okay, we got our pants, our shoes, our kid, and then we have our kids. Okay, check, kid, we got the kid. But so they leave, and they find out a day into the journey that Jesus isn't there with them, and they have to go back and look for him. And Mary still doesn't understand this either. She says, why have you treated us so? It says his mother said, son, why have you treated us so? Your father and I have been searching for you in great distress. And it says that they did not understand the saying that he spoke to them about being in his father's house. So this was a great, just think about losing your grandkid. I have 21 grandkids now, or you have nieces, and to think about losing them in a shopping mall. You
Oh, that drives me crazy. When I'm with my grandnieces, I hang on to them for dear life,
Yes, of course. And just the man, and it was dangerous traveling back then. Remember the man who was beat up on his way to Jericho? That I was running one time through Israel, and I ran right face to face with a hyena one time. I mean, it's not without danger over there, even back in those days. And so here's Mary and Joseph. They can't find their son, and that's a great sorrow. They say, well, how could he have not come with us? By the way, they traveled in big caravans, families together. So men were in one part of the group and the women in another part. And when they came together, they said, where's Jesus? I don't know. You lost him? Oh, no, we've lost the Son of God. I thought he was with you. And they had to go back and find him. So the fifth sorrow of Mary is Jesus dies on the... she meets Jesus. The fourth one meets Jesus on the road to Calvary. And it says that the women were mourning and lamenting, and it says that he comforted them. How did he comfort them? He comforted them by saying, there's going to be a war in Jerusalem. You're going to wish you never had kids. You're all going to suffer. But that's not comforting. I would be scared to death if he told me that. But he tells them, I remember in the movie, Mel Gibson, he says to his mother, I make all things new, with his face.
I love that scene. That's so powerful, that scene.
It is. It's a powerful scene. But there, Mary sees him on the road to Calvary. There's nothing she can do for him. And I love the scene where, as a baby, he falls and she runs and helps him. But now when he falls, she can't run and help him. There's nothing she can do. The fifth sorrow is Jesus dies on the cross. And the way I say this is that I remember, Teresa, when my mother was 100 years old and she was in the nursing home and she was very alert, astute mentally, and my sister Patty died. At 80 years old, my mother was 100. I was the one that had to go the next morning and tell my mother that her only daughter had died.
Wow.
And that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I watched my mom just collapse into her wheelchair and start to sob. This is the statement that there's no sorrow more than seeing a child die before you do. And here Mary watches not only her son die on the cross, and now she understands what that sword piercing your soul means, but she sees him dying there, and she knows he's innocent, and she knows he's lovely, and he's wonderful, and he's doing this for everybody else, but nobody else understands it, and that's a great sorrow for her.
Okay, I don't want to interrupt you, but I do, because we have less than 2 minutes left. The sixth sorrow of Mary, the piercing of the side of Jesus, and the last sorrow, the body of Jesus placed in the temple. So if you can wrap this up in 45 seconds, you get a prize, my friend.
Okay, she pierces the side of Jesus. I'm sure that blood splattered her because she was there. She took him down with Joseph of Arimathea, takes her limp, cold son down off the cross, and then they put him in a tomb. And whether she knew he was going to raise from the dead or not, I'm sure she probably did, but we're not told that she does. That cold body, they put him in a tomb and they roll that stone across, and she stands there looking.
We're out of time, but you know what? Are you going to make this available? Please do. Send me a link and I'll post it on Facebook. The Seven Sorrows of Mary in the Bible.
We're going to
very own Steve Ray.
More.
Steve, we got to run. We're going to get interrupted by the satellite break. But thank you, Seven Sorrows of Mary, our very own Steve Ray, with all the details. Taylor Swift announcing her engagement back in late August, and as many of you already know, it quickly sparked a lot of commentary, not only in secular circles, but in Catholic and other Christian circles as well, who saw it as a hopeful cultural moment, in particular for marriage. Our own Catholic news agency framing it as a positive signal for society. And one of the more memorable reactions came from sociologist Brad Wilcox, who teaches on marriage and writes on marriage, who said, "Expect a spike in marriage. Taylor and Travis put a ring on it." So there's been a lot of commentary to weigh in on this and what we can do with this in terms of helping people understand the importance of marriage, the sacramental nature of it, how beautiful it is, and why we need to encourage marriages is, of course, our marriage experts, Greg and Julie Alexander of the Alexander House, and our Mornings on Marriage. Okay, so Greg, let me go to you first. Why do you think her engagement struck such a chord in both the secular and Catholic circles out there? Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, it's great to be here, Teresa. You know, of course, many people know that for years now, Taylor Swift has always been singing about relationships and heartbreaks and things of that nature. But now we see her embracing engagement. And it's kind of a reminder for her fans that it's okay to have that big dream about one day getting married. And this is important because, you know, the marriage rate has fallen. In fact, in 2010, it was the first time that the marriage households in the United States fell below 50%. And just last year, 2024, 47% of the households in the United States were made up of married couples. So again, clearly the marriage rate is dropping. And when you have a cultural, I hate to use the word icon, maybe someone who is really important, step up to the plate and make such a statement about marriage, again, it's going to create conversation. People are going to be talking about it. Her young Swifties are going to be thinking about, once again, getting married. And I think it's a good thing in that regard.
Julie, do you see this as more than just celebrity news? What do you think?
Oh, I hope it is, Teresa. I hope it is. I always go with the quote that, it's amazing how we will listen to teachers and doctors and lawyers and friends and family. And yet when it comes to God, we question everything that he does. God's plan for marriage has always been, and yet we do not talk about it enough. It gave me chills and understanding and knowing that, okay, is this what it takes for us to get to the point where now we can speak about marriage openly and in an awesome way? And we don't always want to look to celebrities to see what it looks like to do good stuff, because we never know, what is their background, what do they do, what do they believe in. But at least we can talk now about marriage and the importance of it, because so often so many people, even people we know, their kids are saying, I'm not getting married, or if I do get married, I'm not having children. There's just this cultural influence that has come over us in our culture, and it's seeped into the church, which is sad. So hopefully we can use this time to bring out good things, to talk about the importance of marriage and that it is a good thing.
Talking with Greg and Julie Alexander from the Alexander House on Mornings on Marriage this month about the possible impact in a positive way on marriage after the announcement of the engagement of Taylor Swift. Now, she practically broke the internet, and I think and on her website, and I guess it was just record numbers of people that were, sending messages and tweeting and retweeting and posting and reposting and sharing and all that stuff. My concern, Greg, and I'll go to you next, and we discussed this when we were talking earlier this week in preparation for the program, is that people will look at marriage as something cool and hip, but do they understand the commitment? I mean, it's fine if it brings an interest in it and people are looking into it, but I hope that we can build on this opportunity. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's, again, an excellent opportunity for everything you just mentioned. She broke the internet, so people are paying attention. People are watching. And if we don't think that people like this don't have an impact, Look at in the past fashion, politics. Everywhere you turn, there's always some celebrity voice out there that's influencing the way that we think. But I think it's a great opportunity, again, as the church to take this so that we can once again meet people where they're at, and begin having the conversation as Julie talked about. Can you imagine, a priest getting up in his homily saying something like, hey, everybody's talking about Taylor Swift's engagement. Let's talk about what engagement should really consist of. Let's talk about marriage. Let's talk about the permanence and lifelong aspect of the marriage relationship. So, again, it gives us an opportunity to have conversation once again as we're not talking about it. And, of course, people not desiring it. I'm sure you and like Julie growing up, always dreaming about that one day getting married in that white dress and, white picket fence and 2.5 kids and all those different things. Well, that's come by the wayside. So maybe once again, we can see little girls dreaming about one day getting married.
I'm really hoping, Julie, that she has a church wedding. I haven't heard anything about any plans yet, but wouldn't that be interesting?
Yes, it would be very interesting, and I like you, Teresa. It's like the encouragement of allowing people to see, because you can say that it's you're on kind of pins and needles from our perspective. Great that they got engaged, but now what? And right. Now what's the next sign that they're going to give to people? So but I love what Greg said. If we could get ahead of the ball game, literally, and start hearing things, even people sitting around the table, families, and talking to their kids about the importance of, yes, marriage is critical, but marriage in God's way, in His house, in the church, not on the beach, not at the resort, just these things that people don't normally talk about until their kids get of age to get married or engaged, and all of a sudden they're saying, hey, guess what, Mom and Dad? We're getting married at the beach. We're not getting married in the church. You want to come? And we see so many decisions in families because people do not have these discussions, Teresa.
Well, and they don't even know that you can't. There's many people in the church that don't know, well, why can't I get married on the beach? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? So this is an opportunity, and Greg, going back to what you said, to really explain what the church teaches, right?
Absolutely, Teresa. And we're confronted with it all the time. Why can't I do this? And why can't I get married here? if two people love each other, and all these different things that are out there, again, because we have been silent on the topic of marriage. One of my frustrations, coming up, I believe it's next month, Vocations Month, or November, but marriage is never talked about even as a vocation. It's almost as if you don't feel called to be a priest or religious, maybe you want to think about marriage. When in fact, all of that flows from the marriage relationship. That is the primordial vocation that we should be talking about and screaming from the rooftops. But you never even hear about the fact that marriage is a vocation.
Or that marriage is one of the sacraments of service, right?
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. Remind Greg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, remember, did you hear that, honey?
Are you listening, dear?
Did you hear what Teresa said? I'm just...
I thought we were going to get through one interview without a jab, but here we go.
That wouldn't be any fun. Come on. No, but I think this is a really, really good topic to talk about. I was thinking my pastor is so great with his e-blast. He does such a great job. Every Sunday, he sends out this incredible e-blast to all the parishioners with all these great links, to different resources and videos. Bishop Barron, Jeff Cavins, even sent out my State series. I was thanking him and sent that out this weekend. But this is an opportunity, as you said, and Greg, I'll go back to you, and Julie, both of you can have the last word. We have about 2 minutes left. So if you work on, let's say, a parish article or maybe a parish e-blast to encourage your parish to mention this and use this as an opportunity, even maybe take a link from this interview and share the interview, right?
Absolutely, and that's how things get done when the grassroots movements start to take place. That people start going to their pastors and say, "Hey, did you see the article about Taylor Swift?" And it's interesting because I noticed even on our Facebook post, whenever we're posting about a show, there's a few commentaries or likes on it, but with this topic, there's been very few. And I would think it's because we mentioned Taylor Swift. It's like, oh wow, Taylor Swift. What do we have good to say about her? And people just automatically tune out. But again, we have to understand that people like this, they do influence culture. And so we can use this influence in a good way by petitioning our pastors and secretaries and the bulletins and all those different things to kind of point to the positive aspect.
Well, it's disappointing. Oh, go ahead, Julie. Go ahead. No, finish.
No, I was just going to say it goes back to the book of Revelation. It goes back to that point of Jesus coming to the people and telling them, I see your good works. I see what you do. I see these things. However, let me tell you what you should be doing to win my love and to come back to your first love. And then he gives suggestions. It's a perfect time for what's going on in the culture, but to allow the culture to open the door, but don't stay in the culture. Come back to God and the faith and the church and teach what the church teaches.
Yeah. And I think pray for this engaged couple. I mean, they're two very, very prominent people on the cultural scene. She's a superstar. He's a football player. They're darlings of America. But at the same time, I believe she was raised in a Christian home. And unfortunately, a lot of her music and a lot of the messages that she's been putting out there have been very, very left-leaning and I think over-sexualized. And I pray for them. And I pray that they get married in the church. And maybe she goes back to her Christian roots. But I also pray, as you said, that we can use this as an example and build on the importance of marriage as in a Catholic sacramental marriage. Thanks, you two. Great stuff. thealexanderhouse.org. Check out their great work. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Speaking of people not getting married in the church, I can remember many moons ago, Deacon Dom and I, God willing, in just about a week, will be married 42 years. And I can remember trying to get our wedding on the calendar. It was still actually busy back then. And talking with other deacons, their wives who do marriage ministry as we do, and as Greg and Julie Alexander do. In the churches, you talk to pastors as well, and people are not scheduling weddings. As Julie and Greg said, they're just not getting married, especially in the church anymore. So we'll see what happens. I think we also need to pray for this couple and really pray that this is a positive thing and that somehow when they do get married, that it's done well and respectfully and hopefully, God willing, I really do hope in a church because I know she has a Christian background. I'm not sure what church her family was in, but I believe she grew up as a Christian. So we shall see, and we will continue to pray for both of them and all engaged couples and pray for more people to consider, especially to be married in the one holy Catholic and apostolic faith. Coming up in the second hour of Catholic Connection on EWTN's Radio Extra, we are going to take a look, of course, at the Newman Guide News. And this will be fun because we've got some great news education-wise. There's another record-breaking class in enrollment. We're also going to be talking about the expansion of the tuition-free programs and the Catholic Montessori Institute. And this is so wonderful. So we're going to be talking with our guest, and she is with the University of Mary, and we're going to be talking about all these different developments that are happening at this wonderful place and why it's important for us. Her name is Rachel Brasch, and she is the Vice President for Public Affairs at the University of Mary, and she joins us along with Kelly Salomon for our Newman Guide News on a Tuesday.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Do hope your Tuesday is going well. It's September 9th, 2025, the second hour of Catholic Connection here on EWTN's Radio Extra. Thanks for tuning in. We are going to be talking education this morning with, of course, Kelly Salomon in our Newman Guide News from the Cardinal Newman Society. And today, specifically, we're talking about another record-breaking class in enrollment and expansion of the tuition-free programs in the Catholic Montessori Institute at the University of Mary. This is very exciting. How come they're so successful? Well, we'll get to the nitty-gritty of this, and hopefully there'll be lots of examples for us to pass around to other schools. And our guest will be Rachel Brasch, and she's a VP for Public Affairs at the University of Mary. And it's really cool that they're also seeing huge numbers at the Montessori level. And I want to talk to her a little bit about the background of Montessori. Now, the person who founded it actually is from the region of the Marche in Italy, near Ancona. And this very interesting background in terms of an educator and what she saw and why she wanted to change things a little bit and come up with this Montessori program. So we'll talk about that as well. And I understand they're even doing a pilgrimage following the footsteps of the foundress of the Montessori movement to Italy. So that'll be awesome too. And so that is coming up this morning in your second hour of Catholic Connection on September 9th, the feast of St. Peter Claver. Pray for us. Also in 2 cents, did you know, and this is big news, breaking news, we should have a drum roll, that the feast days now for our two new saints, St. Carlo of Cudis and Giorgio Frassati, Pier Giorgio Frassati, have been picked by the church. October 12th, I think I misspoke earlier and said on the first hour and said the 15th, that would be the feast day of, it's my saint, St. Teresa of Avila. Anyway, October 12th, and St. Pier Giorgio Frassati will be on July 4th. Of course, the two men were canonized Sunday by Pope Leo XIV in St. Peter's Square. So we will talk about the feast days, and also we're working on getting you a clip from my Saints in Italy series where I take you directly to the Church of St. Mary Major in Assisi, revisiting the life of this amazing young man who is now a saint in the church and whose feast day we will celebrate on October 12th, which is actually pretty close to the feast day of St. Francis of Assisi. And even though St. Francis will have passed away 800 years ago next year, and of course Carlo passing away in 2006, there's so many similarities between the two. And that is why Carlo wanted to be buried in Assisi, especially Francis's love for the Eucharist, his love for the Blessed Mother, and of course Francis and his work with the poor, because that was always on the heart of Carlo Acutis and also Pier Giorgio Frassati. So again, the feast days have been chosen: St. Carlo Acutis, October 12th, and St. Pier Giorgio Frassati on July 4th. Let's take a look at the weather and see what's happening in terms of the forecast for today and the middle of the week. Looks like we're getting a lot of rain across the country. We have severe thunderstorms possible in portions of the central and southern plains, and there's a potential for flooding across Kansas. In the Pacific Northwest and Northern California, there is potential for isolated flash flooding from thunderstorms near burn scars and sensitive terrain, and then showers and heavy rain will also persist down in the Florida Peninsula, and that will be through the middle of the week. Do hope you're having a blessed day so far. We appreciate your listenership here on EWTN, both on our regular network programming and here on EWTN's Radio Extra. A busy news day, so let's get started on September 9th, the Feast of St. Peter Claver, with the news here on EWTN's Radio Extra. President Trump says America was founded on faith, and when it's strong, good things happen for the country. He spoke on religious liberty at the Museum of the Bible in Washington yesterday.
And under the Trump administration, we're defending our rights and restoring our identity as a nation under God. We are one nation under God.
Trump saying America was founded with religious freedom at the forefront.
But as everyone in this room understands, it is tyrants who are denying our rights and the rights that come from God. And it's this Declaration of Independence that proclaims we're endowed by our Creator with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
He also announced yesterday the Department of Education will issue guidance aimed at protecting the right to prayer in schools. His appearance coinciding with a public meeting held by the Department of Justice's Religious Liberty Commission to gather information and testimony on issues related to religious freedom in America. The 8-year-old boy killed in that mass shooting at a Minneapolis Catholic church last month is being remembered for his energy and his kindness. Fletcher Merkel's aunt, Erin Shermack, was among those who spoke at his funeral over the weekend.
His gift to us, to all of us, was the chance to know him and love him. That was Fletcher's greatest gift.
Hundreds of people attending the service at Mount Olivet Lutheran Church, including Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara. A funeral for the other child killed in the shooting, 10-year-old Harper Moisky, is set for next weekend. Meanwhile, Vatican experts saying yesterday the 2 children killed in that shooting in Minneapolis could one day be included on a list they are compiling of new martyrs and witnesses to the faith. Harper and Fletcher were killed while attending, as you heard, a parochial school mass at Annunciation Catholic Church. It happened on August 27th, prompting some to ask whether they could be considered martyrs killed in hatred of the faith. The president of the Vatican Commission of New Martyrs, Witnesses of the Faith, saying if the diocese or other local ecclesial entities present the figures to us as witnesses of the faith, we will examine them and see if we can include them. The commission was created by Pope Francis 2 years ago under the Dicastery for the Causes of Saints, and they're compiling an archive of the lives of Christian martyrs, both Catholic and non-Catholic, who have been killed in the new millennium. Speaking of which, Pope Leo XIV is set to preside at a prayer service to remember the many Christians of our time who have been killed because of their faith. The Holy Father will be joined by representatives of other Christian churches and communities for an ecumenical commemoration of martyrs and witnesses of the faith of the 21st century, which will take place on the Feast of the Exaltation of the Cross. That's this Sunday, September 14th, in St. Paul outside the walls in Rome. The commemoration is also an initiative of the Dicastery for the Causes of Saints and its Commission of New Martyrs, Witnesses to the Faith, as we just explained, which again was established by the Pope Francis in 2023. In other news this morning, Mark Mayfield tells us the Supreme Court is blocking a federal judge's ruling that restricted the way ICE agents conduct immigration operations in Los Angeles.
President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, applauded the decision.
It's the right call, and I'm glad they found that way because these men and women, ICE and Border Patrol, they're well trained. They know exactly what they're doing. They follow the law.
The federal officers had been restricted from stopping people based on their race or ethnicity or if they speak Spanish. The court's decision was in response to an emergency request filed by the Trump administration, and it puts on hold the ruling from the Biden-appointed judge. Homan says he can't understand why a governor or a mayor wouldn't want to protect the people of L.A. and help ICE arrest dangerous criminals. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Meanwhile, the president of the union representing Border Patrol agents is praising that Supreme Court decision on enforcement tactics used in Los Angeles. Paul Perez says ethnicity and language are simply factors among several that are used in immigration enforcement.
We use a number of factors to determine where we're going to go and who we're going to go after. And many of these people, they run as soon as our agents and officers get there. So that as well is an articulable fact that can be used.
The Supreme Court's ruling allowing the continuation of roving enforcement operations. The ruling, though, is preliminary. The case is ongoing. Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security launching an immigration crackdown this week in Chicago and across the state of Illinois. The DHS announcing yesterday on social media the launch of what they're calling Operation Midway Blitz in honor of Katie Abraham. Her father spoke about the man accused of killing her in a DUI crash.
So to me, these are not the productive folks we want to bring in the country. You want to build a country on migrants, probably not the guy you want to stand behind to build a country.
Police say Abraham dying in January when an undocumented drunk driver slammed into the SUV in which she and her friends were riding. Officials say the ICE operation will target the criminal illegal aliens who flock to Chicago and Illinois because they know the governor there, Governor Pritzker, and his sanctuary policies would protect them and allow them to roam freely on American streets. And the president is also speaking out about last month's deadly stabbing of a Ukrainian refugee on a Charlotte light train last month. He commented on the attack yesterday morning.
There are evil people. We're all people of religion, but there are evil people, and we have to confront that. I just give my love and hope to the family of the young woman who was stabbed.
New video released showing the moments before the 23-year-old was stabbed to death by a man sitting right behind her. Trump called the man a lunatic and said, "We have to be able to handle this. If we don't have a country." The man was arrested and has been charged with first-degree murder. The Health Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., reportedly planning to announce that taking Tylenol during pregnancy may actually be linked to autism. Reporter Marissa Perez says that's according to a story in the Wall Street Journal.
We did hear from an HHS spokesperson who says, quote, until we release the final report, any claims about its contents are nothing more than speculation, but they add they will be using, quote, gold standard science.
Meanwhile, the company that makes Tylenol says it has continuously evaluated the science and believes there's no causal link between the pain relievers used during pregnancy and autism. Ross Cullen tells us the Prime Minister of France expected to resign after losing a confidence vote.
Francois Bayrou will formally tender his resignation to President Emmanuel Macron on Tuesday. And the president has a few options. He can appoint a new prime minister, call a snap general election, or he can himself resign, although he has ruled that out. The challenge for President Macron is, can he find a prime minister who can find a majority in parliament to pass a budget before the end of the year? Ross Cullen, Paris.
Another election a little bit closer to home. It appears New York City Mayor Eric Adams not want to talk about the mayoral election after insisting on Friday he will not be dropping out of it. Adams today dodging reporter questions on the matter at an unrelated event.
Next question. Mr. Mayor.
There's been reports President Trump wants him, along with Republican Curtis Sliwa, to drop out of the race to give Andrew Cuomo a better chance at beating the Democratic nominee and frontrunner Zohran Mamdani. Polls show Adams in a distant fourth place in the race, and there are some reports that Trump is considering offering Adams a job within his administration. Mamdani, Cuomo, and Adams will all speak at churches on Sunday while campaigning, and Sliwa spoke to voters in the subway and insists he won't be dropping out of the race either. Daniel Martindale tells us a tsunami? Well, it's not expected after a magnitude 5.8 earthquake struck off the coast of California and also the state of Oregon.
The earthquake hit just after 9 o'clock Monday night. It was centered about 165 miles northwest of Eureka, California. There was a magnitude 4.4 aftershock in the same area 7 minutes later. No tsunami warnings, advisories, watches, or threats are in effect. I'm Daniel Martindale.
Finally, in our news segment at almost 13 minutes past the hour on a Tuesday morning edition of Catholic Connection. It's September 9th, 2025. Tammy Trujillo tells us self-described tax experts of social media are costing taxpayers millions in penalties.
According to an IRS news release, the agency has reported more than $160 million in penalties since 2022. The IRS is now warning of two schemes in particular that have been circulating recently, which promote the misuse of the fuel tax credit, as well as the sick and family leave credit. Taxpayers who subscribe to social media tips are encouraged to amend their tax returns immediately, respond to IRS letters, and hire reputable tax professionals. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
Again, it's a Tuesday, September 9th. Hope your day is going beautifully. It's a feast day of St. Peter Claver. Pray for us. Coming up, we're going to talk about the new feast days for the new saints, also a little bit more about those new saints. And then we're going to have a great discussion about education, as we do every Tuesday morning, with our Newman Guide News with Kelly Salomon and her guest, Rachel Brasch. The topic, another record-breaking class in enrollment, expansion of the tuition-free programs at University of Mary and the Catholic Montessori Institute, how that is growing. What's their secret over there? What are they doing? We'll find out. Welcome back. Hope you're having a great day. It is a Tuesday morning, the feast of St. Peter Claver. Hope you're doing well. And we are still talking about the canonizations, of course, of Pier Giorgio Frassati and Carlo Acutis, now saints, and we have their feast days. So you do want to mark these down on the calendar. And I'm going to read the story from the Catholic News Agency. It's very brief, and then I'll comment on what's going on in terms of things in Italy here regarding these amazing saints. So you can find this story at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Vatican establishes feast days of St. Carlo Acutis and St. Pier Giorgio Frassati. The Catholic Church will commemorate the liturgical memorial of St. Carlo Acutis on October 12th and of St. Pier Giorgio Frassati on July 4th. The two young men canonized September 7th by Pope Leo in St. Peter's Square at the Vatican. In the case of St. Carlo Acutis, the Italian teen who died in 2006 and was beatified in Assisi in October 2020, his feast day was set for October 12th, actually coinciding with the anniversary of his death from leukemia at the age of 15. The decree of then the Congregation, now Dicastery for Divine Worship and the Discipline of the Sacraments, promulgated after the beatification, set the date for the calendars of the Diocese of Assisi and Milan, in addition to authorizing its celebration in other communities that requested it. So, Assisi, of course, is where he is buried. Milan is where he was raised. He was actually born in England. He was born in London and raised in Milan when his family moved there. So mark this date down on your calendar, October 12th, for St. Carlo Acutis, that's his feast day, and for St. Pier Giorgio Frassati. That will be easy to remember because it's our July 4th in America, of course, our Independence Day. Pier Giorgio Frassati, a young man from Torino who passed away in 1925, beatified by Pope John Paul II in 1990, will be commemorated every year on July 4th, also coinciding with the day of his death. His memorial mass is celebrated especially in Italy and in youth communities that consider him a patron and a spiritual role model. Both saints commemorated on the date they passed into eternal life have become role models of the faith and commitment for young people. Acutis is known for his witness of faith in the digital world and his love for the Eucharist. And Frassati was described by St. John Paul as a man of the Beatitudes. Their intense spiritual life and commitment to charitable works continues to inspire new generations of Catholics. Okay, so October 12th for St. Carlo and July 4th for St. Pier Giorgio. These are the feast days that were set aside for these two new and great young saints who were just canonized over the weekend in St. Peter's Square. Now, what's interesting about this, I don't know if you've noticed it, but I did speak with Matt Swaim of the Sunrise Morning Show yesterday about this phenomenon that's going on with the secular media and these new saints. It's as if the canonization of St. Pier Giorgio Frassati didn't even happen. In several interviews that I did over the weekend, although the people were very interested in the story itself, the vast majority of the discussions were all about Carlo, God's influencer, this teen and the internet, and poor St. Pier Giorgio Frassati was kind of left out of it. One interview I did on Sunday, he was never even mentioned in the introduction, and there was a big picture of Carlo when they came to me and everything, which is fine and wonderful. I wanted to talk about Carlo as well, but nothing from the anchor about Pier Giorgio Frassati. So I infused it into my conversation and talked about both of them, and I thought by saying that perhaps the anchor would pick up on it and I could discuss Pier Giorgio Frassati a little bit further, but that unfortunately did not happen. So I thought this morning, because there's been so much coverage on Carlo, that we could talk a little bit about Pier Giorgio Frassati. According to the FrassatiUSA.org, the Frassati Society, which is a wonderful organization that follows this now great saint, he was born Pier Giorgio Michelangelo Frassati in Turin, Italy, on April 6, 1901. His mother was a painter. His father was the founder and director of the newspaper La Stampa. He was also influential in Italian politics, holding positions as an Italian senator ambassador to Germany. At an early age, Pier Giorgio joined the Marian Solidarity and the Apostle of Prayer, and he obtained permission, get this, to receive daily communion, which was rare at that time. Now, what's interesting about Carlo and Pier Giorgio, and I mentioned this also in one of the interviews I did. I even mentioned it this morning. I did a little segment with Guadalupe Radio all about the two saints. Is they both at an early age, obviously because they died very young. Pier was 24 and Carlo was only 15. They had this sense of the importance of God to the point where they excelled at making sure that God was in their life. Can you imagine Pier Giorgio asking for permission to receive daily communion? Now, what's interesting about this is in both cases with Pier Giorgio and Carlo, their parents were not faithful Catholics. They were Catholic. They raised their kids Catholic, obviously gave them the sacraments, but they did not practice their faith seriously. And Carlo's mother even said this recently. She was talking about how it was Carlo who brought her back to the faith, and he always wanted to go to Mass. He always wanted to stop into Mass. He always wanted to pray at the church. And she found that somewhat odd because faith was not a central part of their life. Now, getting back to Pier Giorgio Frassati, the same thing. He was very involved in church, but his family didn't know too much about where he stood. And actually, it wasn't until after he died, at his funeral, when so many people came to the funeral, the streets were packed, the family was stunned, especially the amount of poor people that came to pay their respects because he did so much to help them. So Pier Giorgio developed a deep spiritual life, which he never hesitated to share with friends. The Holy Eucharist and the Blessed Virgin were the two poles of his world of prayer. At the age of 17 years old, he joins the St. Vincent de Paul Society, dedicating much of his spare time to serving the sick and the needy, caring for orphans and assisting the demobilized servicemen returning from World War I. Now, this is another similarity with Carlo Acutis, because Carlo's mom would talk about how Carlo wanted to go work in the soup kitchens and often gave away his own food, his own things, his own lunch, his own clothes, his jackets to the poor. Pier Giorgio Frassati decided to become a mining engineer, studying at a local university in Turin so he could serve Christ better among the miners. Although he considered his studies his first duty, they did not keep him from social and political activism. In 1919, he joined the Catholic Student Foundation, along with the organization known as Catholic Action. He became a very active member of the People's Party, which promoted the Catholic Church's social teaching based on the principles of Pope Leo XIII. What little he did have, he gave to the poor, even using his bus fare for charity and then running home to be on time for meals. The poor and the suffering were his masters, and he was literally their servant, which he considered a privilege. But his charity did not simply involve giving something to others, but giving completely of himself. He said this was fed by daily communion with Christ in the Holy Eucharist and by frequent adoration, and by meditating on St. Paul's hymn of charity in 1 Corinthians 13 and by the writings of St. Catherine of Siena. So you think about him, and he was also very normal, though. Mountain climbing was one of his favorite sports, outings in the mountains. He never lost the chance to have fun with his friends and play practical jokes. But at the end of the day, the most important thing to him, and he, by the way, was a Third Order Dominican, and that's why his body was brought to Santa Maria sopra Minerva during the Jubilee of Youth earlier this summer, so the young people could be close to him, and that's a Dominican church. So when we think about the canonizations, there's much more I could say about Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati. And somebody talks about Carlo Acutis, which is great. Also remind them of the other saint that was canonized on Sunday, St. Pier Giorgio Frassati. Pray for us. We'll be right back. Hope you're having a great day. You are listening to Catholic Connection, the second hour of the program, and always great to catch up with Kelly Salomon, Newman Guide News from the Cardinal Newman Society. And Kelly always gives us great angles and stories. And Kelly, I'm going to let you introduce our special guest this morning, Rachel, because you're the one who brought her to our attention and the wonderful work she's doing at the University of Mary. So please introduce our guest.
Yes, Teresa, I'm thrilled to introduce Rachel Brasch from the University of Mary. She's a leader at this great Catholic university in Bismarck, North Dakota, that has a really strong Catholic identity. It's recommended in the Newman Guide. And I wanted to bring Rachel on the show this week because University of Mary just welcomed its largest incoming class in its history. And I think there's a great story to tell here about what the University of Mary is doing well and how it's really a model for other Catholic colleges across the country.
Rachel, thanks for joining us. Okay, inquiring minds want to know, as the old saying goes, what in the world is your secret there? What are you guys doing that makes you so successful? Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Teresa. Our secret is that we are who we say we are. It seems like that's maybe a challenging thing to do in today's world, but we don't think it has to be that hard. We are authentically Christian, Catholic, and Benedictine, and everything we do comes from that foundational understanding of what it means to be those things. And so because of that, we really think, and we're seeing that, right, with the students walking through the door, that people want to be formed. They don't want just an education for the professions. They want an education for the whole of life, and that's exactly what we do here at the University of Mary.
Well, let me ask you, because I know this has happened in other areas. For example, where I'm from in southeastern Michigan, I'm sure you're familiar with the wonderful Sisters of Mary, Dominican Sisters of Mary, Mother of the Eucharist. They have their wonderful grade schools, and many times the children will go, and their parents send them because they know they're going to get a good education. But the young people learn the faith and end up bringing the children back to the church. So I know that you're doing more in addition to college education. You're also doing things at the Montessori level. But do you think this is something that you're seeing where young people, because they're so excited about their faith, are bringing parents back to the church and getting them more excited?
Well, it's funny you asked that. The answer is yes, absolutely. We see that, and of course, you mentioned Montessori. That's a really exciting opportunity for us, and to be able to really go back to the roots of a Catholic Montessori education, and what that means. But we see this every day. I will say that being at the University of Mary and my children being Catholic education, we were actually brought into the church because of how we were formed as a family, and being able to engage in that. And so this is really about formation. That's why we have programs like bioethics that's talking about the lifespan, right, and the dignity of life. Programs like the Montessori Institute that allows us to really engage with students in a meaningful way that's really grounded in both that Montessori pedagogy and, of course, Catholic theology. But then, of course, all the way through doctorate programs, when you see students who are walking across the stage that are in their 60s saying, I can do this, and having their family cheer them on, there's nothing greater than being able to participate in that.
Wow. Kelly, what is so interesting, do you think, from a Newman Guide News and from the Cardinal Newman Society perspective about the University of Mary?
Well, Teresa, every year several Catholic colleges have been closing, especially the last several years. There's fewer students than ever going to college because of this demographic cliff we're seeing, and fewer students choosing to go to college at all. So I think it's really big news that University of Mary welcomed this largest incoming class in its history. And I think this is a trend we're seeing among all Newman Guide colleges, that over the last 10 years, Newman Guide colleges have grown 22%. And so I think that students are eager for something different, something more than what a state university can offer. And I think the University of Mary has done a wonderful job of combining the Catholic intellectual tradition and integrating the faith in all of its courses. Rachel, I'd love for you to share, too, about how University of Mary has made this more affordable for Catholic families with several of your tuition-free academies.
Yes, it's a really exciting opportunity for our students, and it's just been a gift to be able to participate in the process. Back in 2023, we launched the Tuition-Free Nursing Academy. This is available to 30 students every single year. Every fall, we welcome in a new cohort where they do their entire bachelor's degree tuition-free.
Wow.
And it's amazing, right? And that's not all that they're able to do. They go on retreats. They go on a European pilgrimage where we start out in Italy and then end up in Lourdes, France. And so they are able to do all of these things, but they're also part of our year-round campus program, which is something that Monsignor Shea, our president, formulated several years ago, where our students finish in 2.6 years. So it's still 8 full semesters, but they're graduating with their bachelor's degree in 2.6 years. So they're entering the workforce sooner. And, of course, we need nurses. But it really created this beautiful platform when we saw the interest of this, not only for Nursing Academy, but for our health sciences. The St. Gianna School of Health Sciences is one of our largest academic schools on campus. And so that allowed us to look into other areas, as Kelly mentioned. Now we launched academies in elementary ed and accounting, and we have tuition-free scholarships in both engineering and the humanities for a total of 56 tuition-free scholarships that we're offering to incoming students every single year.
So, Rachel, how do young people qualify then for the free tuition?
It's an application process, and all they need to do is just contact us. They need to apply to the university, and then we will give them that application right away, as long as they are interested in that major. And we're looking at two major components. One, of course, we want to see what their academic performance is, right? And are they a good fit for that program? But we also want to know who they are. We want to know what their dreams are, what their struggles have been, how they want to be able to thrive as they grow into adulthood. And so we bring them on campus, we interview them, we welcome them, our students spend time with them, our faculty get to know them, and then at that time, we make decisions on that. But even those who do not get into that tuition-free academy, we're still an extremely affordable institution. And so those students are still eligible for a variety of scholarships, because ultimately our students should be set up for the whole of life when they graduate. And that also means that we have to be conscientious about every single tuition dollar and make good use of it for those students so that they graduate with less debt.
Yeah, this is pretty amazing, because you can end up with so much debt. I mean, when I went to college eons ago, I think about it, and I thought it was a lot of money back then, and I look at what I paid compared to what it is now, and it's pennies compared to what most young people have to pay for a college education, even undergraduate versus graduate programs. We are having a great conversation about education, as we always do, with Newman Guide News' Kelly Salomon from the Cardinal Newman Society, and our special guest that Kelly lined up for us, Rachel Brasch, who is the VP for Public Affairs at the University of Mary, talking about higher education, talking about the cost affordability in terms of how they provide so many tuition-free educations for so many young people, and also what their secret is. And when we come back after the break, I do want to get back, Rachel, something you said in the very beginning. It was really interesting. You said you are who you say you are. And I think that is so... It should just make sense, right? We should be who we are, not, deny our identity, but that often doesn't happen, as even in the Catholic world with Catholic, so-called Catholic schools. More Catholic in Action coming your way. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening to Catholic Connection from EWTN, talking about education as we do every week on Tuesdays with Kelly Salomon from the Cardinal Newman Society, Newman Guide News, and also our special guest this morning along with Kelly, Rachel Brasch, who's a Vice President for Public Affairs of the University of Mary in North Dakota. Rachel, as I said before the break, what struck me was early on in our conversation, you said you are who you say you are. You practice what you preach, and you practice the Catholic faith, and you're very open about it. It stands out, though. It shouldn't. You're a Catholic university. This should be like a no-brainer, but it really does stand out in today's world, doesn't it?
It does, and Teresa, this is why I appreciate the Cardinal Newman Society so much, and Patrick Riley's vision and the good work that Kelly and everybody else do, because they're not the gold standard for Catholic education. They're the only standard. And so we are one of many institutions that are authentically Catholic, but at the University of Mary, we really, really focused on making sure that every inch of campus is carefully curated for that student experience so that they can grow. But we're also thinking about every single course. What is that progression? How do we be effective, right, with trying to educate them? How do we discuss vocations in the areas of, like, engineering, right? A baseline expectation for our nursing program, which is number one in the nation, and I believe it's number one in the nation because we expect them to pass things like the NCLEX, right, to become a registered nurse. But that's the bare minimum. We want our nurses that graduate from the University of Mary to really understand how to care for the whole of life. And that means, meeting each person as they are and as a full person, not just by their physiological needs. And so that's, I think, just some of the things that make the University of Mary unique, and why Catholic education is also uniquely prepared to provide higher education in a way that's very, very meaningful. And in a world right now where higher education as a whole is really being questioned,
right.
We have to be the bright light in that.
So, Kelly, what are people saying to you at the Newman Society about the University of Mary?
I think one of the reasons they love University of Mary is that it really combines the best of both worlds. If you can choose from more than 60 degrees, but you have that strong core curriculum in the liberal arts, and you have such a vibrant spiritual life on campus with more than 50 student clubs, daily mass, perpetual adoration, Bible studies, their Marian Grotto, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's just a wonderful institution led in good hands by our friend, Monsignor James Shea. If your listeners haven't, heard Monsignor Shea before, I hope they get a chance to. He's just a phenomenal leader and is really a bright light, as Rachel said, in faithful Catholic education today.
So, Rachel, you've been at this, the school has been open since 1959, right?
Mm-hmm, that's right.
Yeah, and how many students now?
We are topping over 3,900 students, which is our largest enrollment that we've had in the history of the university.
That's a nice size. I mean, when I went to college, and again, it was a long time ago, I went to a public university in Michigan, Central Michigan University, and I think we had about 24,000 students in the whole school, maybe a little bigger than that right now, but that was considered a decent size for a mid-American college campus. But this makes it very personal at this size, correct?
It does, and that also allows us to have a lower student-to-faculty ratio. We don't want large lecture halls. We want opportunities where faculty are having lunch with students at the Crow's Nest, which is our 24/7 restaurant on campus, where they're able to participate together in perpetual adoration, where everybody comes together. We shut down campus every Wednesday at 10 o'clock for an all-campus Mass. So there's no meetings, no classes, where everybody can come and celebrate Mass together. And so it provides this great opportunity where you really do feel, no matter if you're a freshman who's been here for less than 2 weeks or, you've been here for decades, that you feel like you're part of the University of Mary community as soon as you arrive.
Let's shift a little bit to the issue of Montessori, because I know, Kelly, this is something that you wanted to discuss. Kelly, why did you think this was important to mention this with the University of Mary?
Again, just a great example of how the University of Mary takes something like Montessori education and infuses the Catholic faith into the education they're providing. And I'll let Rachel take it away of what exactly this Montessori Institute looks like.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask you, Rachel, you mentioned something as we were going into the break, or maybe it was during the break when we were chatting about the difference between, or maybe it was you, Kelly, Montessori education in general and the Catholic version of that. Rachel, can you explain the difference?
Absolutely. Montessori education is obviously rooted in Catholic education, but there's, I think, a lot of different variations of it. And what we have heard from educators from around the country is help us to receive an authentically Catholic education. That's what the University of Mary does. And so what better way to do that through Montessori education. And it so happened that our director of the Catholic Montessori Institute, she was sitting next to Monsignor Shea at a wedding. And she started to engage with him about what does it look like to create this new Montessori training? How can we really authentically be Catholic? The University of Mary can do this really well. And so that's how this came to be, was this ability just to speak together and to dream about what this is. And of course, we have a lot of requests. And so we're launching the Catholic Montessori Institute. We have our conference coming up here in October, when we're now taking our first registrations for the Catholic Montessori Institute trainings.
I'm looking at the website. It looks really great. We'll get to that in a second so people can get more information. But what is Montessori education? What does it look like, really? Who wants to take that question? Just so people understand if they haven't heard of it. I mean, they have heard the name because they see Montessori schools around the country, but what does that really mean when you come right down to it?
Absolutely.
Rachel, you want to take that?
Yes, of course. Thank you. Montessori education, takes what you might see in a traditional education and strips it down to the person. Many parts of it are actually student-led, and it allows this curiosity that we absolutely love. It's about seeing what is in a student's heart and what is their curiosity, their interest, fostering that. But also, they're learning how to be part of a family. They are learning that their classroom becomes a home for them, that they are engaging in all these various parts of how to share meals together, how to pray together. We talked with one of the Montessori educators, and she was talking about all the little pets that she has, right? How do you care for life? How do you care for God's kingdom? But it is really going back into this very basic understanding of what Catholic education and theology, how that comes through to provide a particular training. And so there's technical components, and there's different institutes that we've partnered with to be able to do that along with our own instructors. But then what the University of Mary brings into this is, of course, bringing them into our community, doing things like going on the pilgrimage where we go to Amsterdam and Italy and different places like that, but then also bringing together this community of people who are really looking for an authentically Catholic Montessori experience to be able to provide to their communities.
Yeah, I'm looking at your website, and again, you were talking with Rachel Brasch and Kelly Salomon on our education segment on Tuesdays. It says, rediscover the religious catalyst for Dr. Maria Montessori's educational revolution. So what do we mean by religious catalyst? Because it seems like, and what I've heard over the years, that they've gotten away, and Rachel, I'll go back to you, and then Kelly, feel free to jump in. It's gotten away from that Catholic perspective of Montessori education.
Right, and of course, Montessori education started out as a Catholic experience, and now it's become more of a methodology, only a pedagogy. And when you just take it as a pedagogical experience, you're really stripping the why behind it. And that is what this is about. It's inserting that why we're doing this, because we are part of the church, right? We are bringing forward this richness and this tradition that the Catholic Church has into education. And so this is part of our mission. This fits in right with our mission, who we are. But more importantly, we want to make sure that these students come in with a thirst and an excitement. That's what children do. We want to foster that through this experience. And to be able to do that and supporting teachers from across the nation, we're just very excited about that.
So Rachel and Kelly, feel free to jump in again, but who's speaking at the conference? Do you have speakers already?
We do. We are actually just lining them up. We have somebody who's actually coming from Italy. We have some local educators here. Joanne Schulzenberg herself is going to be heavily involved. So very much looking forward to welcoming everybody to campus soon.
Kelly, what excites you about this aspect of the University of Mary with Montessori education?
I love that Newman Guide colleges are leading the way in preparing the next generation of Catholic teachers at all levels of Catholic education. That's one of the key ways we're seeing this renewal in Catholic education taking place, is that, University of Mary is helping form great teachers. They're growing out into schools across the country, and they're helping form students in those K-12 years, and then explaining to them the value of continuing that formation at a faithful Catholic college and then in a faithful Catholic graduate program. And, Teresa, I was thinking about this segment this weekend as EWTN did such great coverage of the canonizations of these two new saints, and how these saints, strove for virtue and holiness at such young ages. And that's what Catholic education is all about. That's what we're trying to encourage with the Newman Guide schools and colleges, is to provide students with a really faithful education that provides opportunities for the sacraments and community life that can help form, hopefully, this next generation of saints and many more young canonizations in the future.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, it's such a great weekend, such an encouraging weekend, especially for youth and education and the importance of the Catholic faith. Rachel, how do people get the word about University of Mary? How do you get the word out?
Absolutely. Well, anybody can go to our website. That's umary.edu. In regards to all of our tuition-free academies, it's umary.edu/tuition-free, or you can give us a call at 701-355-8030.
So has I'm sure the school year is already underway right now, huh, Rachel?
It is. We just started this past week, so we are in week 2.
Week 2 already. Gosh, that's amazing. Well, thank you both. And Kelly, always bringing such great topics to this segment. We really appreciate it. Kelly, any final comments on the guest today and the topic?
Rachel, so glad you could join us. Keep up your great work at the University of Mary. We're so glad to see the university growing at such great numbers, attracting more and more students across the country. This is evidence that when Catholic colleges live out their mission well, it is attractive to families who want something more for their students at formation, for their career, and for their whole life. So I'm really excited about what's happening at the University of Mary and eager to keep hearing more about how this school year goes.
Ladies, thank you both so much. Of course, our guest this morning, Kelly Salomon from the Cardinal Newman Society with our Newman Guide News, and our special guest, Rachel Brasch from the University of Mary in North Dakota. How do you stay warm in the winter? Because you guys do get rough winters like we do in Michigan.
There is some wind. We actually have a lodge that is open year-round. It's high humidity, ton of plants, and we have a lot of really great fireplaces to gather
Oh,
around.
fun. Wow.
Yeah.
You guys think of everything. Why wouldn't you want to go to University of Mary, right? Ladies, thanks. You have a great week. God bless you both. And I didn't have a chance to talk to you about the pilgrimage because I wanted to talk more about tracing the footsteps of Dr. Montessori, because she's from a region not too far from where my husband and I live part-time, the region of Le Marche, which is beautiful, near Ancona, the House of Loretto, and all that good stuff. Don't get me started talking about Italy. We'll be here for another hour. All right, ladies, thanks. Have a great week. We'll be right back to let you know what's coming up on a Wednesday morning edition of Catholic Connection. Stay tuned. Welcome back, Catholic Connection. It's a Tuesday, September 9th, wrapping up our program, the second hour of CC with TT on EWTN's Radio Extra. Beautiful day in the neighborhood. This is a day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and to be glad in it. Hope it's a good one for you so far. So excited about the new feast days and something else to look forward to. And being that we live so close to Assisi, it'll be really great to see what's going to be happening on October 12th, the new feast of Carlo Acutis. And of course, we have St. Francis of Assisi on October 4th. And oh my goodness, there's so much, as I mentioned in the 2 Cents segment today, connecting those two saints, one from the 21st century, the first millennial, St. Carlo Acutis, and of course, St. Francis, who went to be with the Lord 800 years ago next October. So next year is going to be huge. It is going to be a big year. And some of the travel experts are saying the Jubilee year will pale in comparison to, not that's not great, but that'll even be bigger next year with the celebration of the life of St. Francis. So coming up tomorrow, speaking of Italy, we have Italy's Shrines and Wonders, and also Joan Lewis will be joining us on a Wednesday, which will be a lot of fun. We'll get her take on the canonization and some things coming up this weekend for Pope Francis. And we're also going to be joined by Father De Souza, who's joining us from the Vatican, and his new role where he is looking at faith and reason. And this is so cool. I love having these kinds of discussions because so many people think that reason runs out the window when you're a faithful person. Actually, it's just the opposite. We'll look at that tomorrow. Have a great Tuesday. Talk to you on a Wednesday. Ciao, ciao.